Social science as a discipline came about as a result of the need to understand society that is evolving to be ever more complex and multifaceted. The scientific nature of the discipline makes it suitable in addressing social issues that have not been encountered before. This video will focus on the research design and methods used in undertaking research. The COVID-19 pandemic is a global crisis that has affected nearly every aspect of life, from health and economy to education and social interactions. Naturally, questions arise in the aftermath of the pandemic. How did the virus spread so quickly? Why are some countries and communities more affected than others? How does the pandemic affect mental health, racial and social inequality, the economy, and politics? These are the kind of questions that social science seeks to answer. Social science is the study of society and the social forces that shape the actions of individuals and groups. It encompasses historical, cultural, sociological, psychological, and political perspectives to understand the impact of events like the COVID-19 pandemic on society. Again, social science is the study of society. It is a useful instrument in understanding the complexities and issues involved in the interrelationships of the different variables that produce the state of affairs at every level in society. And now, let us look into the difference between social science, natural science, and humanities. Social science is different from natural science and humanities because its primary interest lies in predicting and explaining human behavior. Natural science, on the other hand, aims to predict all natural phenomena, and its studies are based on experimentally controlled condition of material entities. Humanities or humanism seeks to understand human reactions to events and the meanings humans impose on experience as a function of culture, historical era, and life history. Again, social science is like trying to figure out how people think and act. It helps us understand why people do the things they do. Natural science is more like trying to figure out how the world around us works, like how plants grow or how the weather changes. Humanities is like trying to understand how people's culture, history, and personal experiences shape their thoughts and actions. The use of the scientific method unites these three fields of study, although it is more commonly used in the social sciences and natural sciences than in humanities. The scientific method is a systematic and logical approach in acquiring and explaining knowledge. It involves a step-by-step procedure of identifying the problem, formulating a hypothesis, and testing this hypothesis by gathering and analyzing relevant data. This method requires critical thinking skills in solving problems. The scientific method is very important in the field of social science since it is the instrument by which issues and problems are examined and recommendations for policy making are offered depending on the findings of the study conducted. The scientific method refers to a standardized set of techniques for building scientific knowledge, such as how to make valid observations, how to interpret results, and to generalize results. It allows researchers to independently and impartially test pre-existing theories and prior findings. It has the same objectives with research, which investigates and studies different materials and sources in the pursuit of advancing knowledge. A researcher tests his or her hypothesis by subjecting it to careful scrutiny and debate and finally comes up with a conclusion that either validates or disproves the hypothesis. In the field of social science, research is an indispensable tool in addressing social issues and problems. Research is like a detective work for a social scientist. It helps to uncover the answers to society's problems, just like how a detective solves a crime. Through research, social scientists help uncover the truth about social issues like poverty. It tackles the questions of what is poverty, who are affected by it, why does it exist, and most importantly, how can we, as a society, solve it. In pursuing research, the use of scientific method is required. The steps in the scientific method are as follows. 1. Defining the problem. 2. Reviewing the literature. 3. Forming hypotheses. 4. Collecting and analyzing data. 5. Drawing conclusions. The scientific method is be applied to social science research by following a set of specific steps or procedures. In the video, you will see the stages of the research process. This process was taken from GARD 2012 as it was shown in the reference. The process will guide you. Follow the stages and it will assist you in the pursuit of your research. In stage 1, defining the research, we would establish the research question and identify the variables or units of analysis that will be studied. For example, if we were studying the relationship between social media use and mental health, Our variables of interest would be social media use and mental health. We would also decide on the time frame or period of the study, for example, measuring social media use and mental health outcomes over a 6-month period. In stage 2, reviewing the related literature, we would examine previous research on the topic of interest to identify any gaps in the existing literature. For example, if we find that there is a lack of research on the effects of social media use on mental health in adolescents, this gap in the literature would inform our study design and hypotheses. In stage 3, formulating the hypothesis, we would develop predictions about the relationship between the variables of interest. For example, we might predict that increased social media use is associated with decreased mental health outcomes. This stage also involves looking into the parameters of the research problem and reflecting on the means of manipulating the variable, such as selecting appropriate measurement tools to capture social media use. In stage 4, preparing the research design, we would determine the type of research we will conduct, whether it is descriptive, exploratory, or experimental. There are several different types of research, each with their own strengths and weaknesses, and each appropriate for different types of research questions. We will define the different research design later. Also, in this stage, we would decide on the criteria for selecting a sample from the population. For example, if our study population is adolescents, we would need to decide on the age range and other demographic characteristics of the participants. Remember that the type of research design selected will depend on the research question, the resources available, and the specific strengths and weaknesses of each research method. In stage 5, collecting the data, we would identify and meet the target participants and use appropriate data collection methods, such as surveys or interviews. For example, we might conduct a survey to collect data on social media use and mental health outcomes from a sample of adolescents. In stage 6, analyzing the data, we would examine the patterns and relationships in the data to answer our research question. For example, we might use statistical analysis to examine the relationship between social media use and mental health outcomes. In contrast to quantitative methods, which focus on numerical data, qualitative methods focus on the understanding of the meaning and experiences of the participants. For example, let's say we are conducting a qualitative study on the experiences of people living in poverty. We have collected data through in-depth interviews with a sample of participants. In stage 6, we would analyze the data by reading through the transcripts of the interviews and identifying themes that emerge from the participants' narratives. In stage 7, interpreting the results and writing the report, we would present the findings of the study and discuss the implications of the results. We would also ensure that the sources, both primary and secondary, are properly cited in the study. For example, we would discuss how our findings contribute to the existing literature on the topic and how they can inform future research and policy decisions related to social media use and mental health. Types of research design. On the next section, we are going to talk about the different types of research design. Research design is essential for conducting a rigorous and systematic study, minimizing bias, and maximizing the chances of finding valid and meaningful results. Especially in the social sciences, a well-designed research plan helps to ensure that the study is conducted in a way that is sensitive to the complexities of human behavior and the social world. The research design sets the direction of the whole study. The research design is a plan or blueprint that outlines the methods and procedures that will be used to conduct the study. It lays out the framework for how the research will be conducted, including the type of research, the sample size, the data collection methods, and the analysis techniques. Research design also determines the direction of the research by specifying the research question, the variables being studied, and the hypotheses that will be tested. The decisions made in the research design stage guide the entire study and ensure that the data collected will be relevant and meaningful to the research question. A well-designed research plan is essential for the success of the study and the validity of the findings. As you are aware of the significance of research design, the University of South Carolina Libraries provides examples of different research designs and their respective characteristics. Descriptive research. It provides answers to basic questions associated with the research problem. It may not be able to conclusively provide the answer to the question why, but it is able to describe what exists with respect to the variables of a given situation. Example, a descriptive study of the factors that lead to domestic violence. Historical research. This design collects, verifies, and synthesizes evidence from the past in order to validate or reject a hypothesis. It uses secondary sources and a variety of primary sources like newspaper clippings, diaries, government records, and archival materials. Example, martial law in the Philippines, the golden or the cursed years in the country's history. Experimental research. This type of research answers the question, what causes something to occur? This design uses both an experimental group and a control group, which allows a measurement of the dependent variable when the independent variable is administered to the experimental group and not to the control group. Example, a study on the effect of sleep deprivation on health and productivity. Exploratory research. This design tackles research problems that have little or no previous studies done on it. It aims to develop tentative theories or hypotheses on research problems that are still in the preliminary stages of investigation. Example, a comparative study on the effectiveness of same-sex parenting vis-a-vis conventional parenting. Cross-sectional research. This design measures similarities or differences across groups and subjects. A specific variable is examined across different groups or subjects. It is rather limited because it does not capture the process of change following intervention. Example, a study on the incidence of breast cancer across different age groups of women. Longitudinal research. It studies the same sample across time or across regular time intervals. This type of study allows researchers to track changes that occur over a period of and identify the variable or variables that might be causing the changes. Example, a study on the effect of TV programming to violent behavior among children. Sequential research. This is a type of research design carried out in a series over a time interval. It has no predetermined sample size, as the researcher can accept the null hypothesis, accept an alternative hypothesis, or choose a new set of samples and repeat the study once again. Example, a study on the effects of diet, exercise, and common medication on heart disease conducted across different age groups. Case study. This type of design is applied to study a very particular research problem. This is used to test whether a specific theory or model is applicable to real-world issues or scenarios. Example, improving school conditions by changing public policy in South Los Angeles, the Community Coalition Partnership. Meta-analysis. This is a type of design that evaluates and summarizes the results of other individual studies. It requires strict adherence to a set criterion in selecting the studies that will be used. An analysis of the previous studies increases the explanatory power of the new study. Example, fertility and women's employment, a meta-analysis. Types of research design, a qualitative and quantitative comparison. Social science research also uses either a quantitative or qualitative methodological approach in gathering and analyzing data. Qualitative method. The qualitative method analyzes qualitative data such as interviews, narratives, and literary texts. It is a way of studying and understanding things by looking at the words and experiences of people involved. It's like when you ask your friend about their day, and they tell you all about it. The researcher also uses this method to study things like books, stories, and other written materials. The focus of this method is to understand and make sense of what's happening, rather than trying to predict or explain it. This method is helpful when the researcher has a good understanding of the social context of the information they are studying. Quantitative method. It's like when you measure how tall you are, or when you count how many people are in the room. This method helps to understand things by using math and numbers, and it allows us to compare and make predictions. Even though numbers can't show us everything, like how happy someone is or how good the education is, it can tell us other important information like the size of a country's population, if there is corruption or not, or how much money a country makes through levels of gross domestic product or GDP. I can give you an example of a study that used quantitative methods to investigate the topic of happiness in the world.
So, the United Nations did a study called the World Happiness Report in 2016. They asked thousands of people, around 1,000 to 3,000 people from different countries, about how happy they are, and looked at things like how much money a country makes, how long people live, how generous people are, and how much social support and freedom there is. Basically, they look at the levels of GDP, life expectancy, generosity, social support, freedom, and corruption. The study found that people are happiest in countries where everyone is happy, not just some people. It means that people are happier in countries where there is less inequality of happiness. The top 5 countries that scored the highest happiness index are Denmark, Switzerland, Iceland, Norway, and Finland. It also found that having people to help during hard times makes people happier. That's why countries with good social programs were at the top of the list. The study shows that to have a happy society, we need more than just money. We need things like fairness, good health, and access to programs.
Sometimes, researchers use a mix of both numbers and words, the combination of quantitative and qualitative information in their study. This is called mixed methods research. The researcher collects both types of information like statistics and interview transcripts, and they use them together to answer their research question. In 2013, John Creswell describes the mixed method as a research approach that integrates both quantitative and qualitative data in a single study or in a sustained long-term program of inquiry to address the research questions. As a reminder, social science is a field of study that examines human behavior and society. It's different from natural science, which studies the natural world and physical phenomena, and humanities, which studies human culture and society. Social science research is guided by the scientific method, which is a framework for conducting research in a systematic and unbiased way. Also, we discussed the research process, research design, and types of research. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos about disciplines and ideas in the social sciences. That's all for this video.